Hi, Grace. How are you?
I am doing well. How about you?
Hey, excellent. Welcome, everybody, to this edition of The Bigger Game from Surviving to Thriving. Grace Gavin's our guest today from No Honesty, three-time founder. I don't know. I think I'll let you take a minute and kind of share a little bit more about what all that means to us and to you.
Yeah, so co-founder of No Honesty. And for those listening, it's KNOW. It's a little bit of a play on words there, but um yeah, throughout my career and my co-founder's career as well, what we just kept finding was this lack of honesty in the workplace. And really if you take that out to beyond the world. And so it really came down to how do we help people develop that skill, that muscle in the workplace? And so, what I really focus on and what I get to do every day is I get to help teams and organizations have real, healthy communication, helping people be open and honest. And we think about those two things as very distinct and different skills. That typically get lumped together, right? You always hear the phrase open and honest. I'm going to be open and honest with you, or be open and honest with me, but we really break them down and we separate that and we help people develop those two as very separate skills to become a masterful communicator. And we've developed simple, tangible, implementable practices to help people do that, because the last thing I want to do is give somebody a theory or a process and say good luck, here's a good idea, and see what happens from there. So that's really what I get to focus on every single day.
So it's the knowledge and then the implementation of that as well, so they can actually make it practical use of it in their lives.
Yes, absolutely, because there's nothing that drives me more than just somebody says something and then my next question is, okay, but how do I do that? How do I do
Right.
that? Yeah.
Let's go to the moon. Excellent.
Right.
How do we get there? All right. So this is the bigger game, right? And talking about going to the moon, right? It's all about the bigger game is all about playing the bigger game. So instead of taking the short win, take the longer approach. Clean something up and not brush underneath the rug because the other party will let me. Because after I do that time and time again, it's like death by a thousand cuts, right? I really carry all that weight over time. But just like you said, open and honest, cleaning it up as soon as it happens. This is the one version of the bigger game. I wonder, what does the bigger game mean to you?
Yeah, so I just told you about how I help companies do it right, but the what's amazing to me are the emails, the conversations that I get to have, because I'm helping people in a company setting, right? We're doing this to help better the company, to create better leaders. But what always blows my mind, and what to me is the bigger game and what I get to do, is the conversations that people get to have in their personal lives too. So I'll get emails about, this helped me have a better financial conversation with my wife. Or I just got one the other day that's like, now I'm thinking about this in context with my kids. How am I really communicating with them? And that to me is the bigger game, because I had um, a really big failure of communication a few years ago. So um, my heart really for this work comes out of the experience of losing my dad. And so in COVID times and the craziness that COVID was, if you'll let me tell this whole long story, um, it was July of COVID, and just when you thought the world couldn't get any more crazy or all those types of things, um, my dad went to the ER with some health concerns. And about 12 days later, I was at the hospital with my mom and me. We were allowed two visitors, or two people to stay with him throughout that time. And about 12 days later, we left that hospital, and he had a stage 4 cancer diagnosis. And it was small cell carcinoma. And so it was a somewhat aggressive form of cancer as well, stage 4. Um, and we had about 5 months of time with him where it was the fight. It was the fight against the cancer. Gonna beat this. And my family was all in on that, but none of us were willing to have a conversation about what was really happening. Because what was really happening, I had one such conversation with my sister. I remember we were in our parents' house, we were in the upstairs, and she had done some research into what were the odds, right, of this diagnosis and this specific type of cancer and the stage that he was at. And I remember her saying it was like a 3 to 5% chance of survival. And we all kind of knew that. We all kind of knew what was coming for us, but none of us would really talk about it. None of us would have a real conversation, myself included. Right? Because the first thought I had was, what are we doing? Right? He's going to chemo treatments and he's taking all these pills and things like that. And we're fighting, but we're not really connecting. At least I wasn't having those real conversations. And even to that point, when she gave me that realization, I still kind of pushed it away. I was like, no, I'm not going to deal in that reality. I'm going to live in this fantasy world where, your dad lives forever. And so we had 5 months with him. It felt like at the same time a really long 5 months and a really short 5 months. And then he ended up passing away December of 2020. And I think back to, you asked what's the bigger game and why do I do what I do? It's that because I had this moment of honesty. I had this conversation with my sister. I had this opportunity to flip what we were doing, to pull us out of the rush of just the fight, 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 and have a deeper relationship, have better conversations, get to ask my dad stories, and just enjoy that time with him rather than just fighting. And I didn't. And to me, that's probably the biggest failing of honesty, of a real conversation, um, that I've had so far in my life, and that I probably will have because I've learned from that. Unfortunately, too late. But to me, that's the bigger game: is if I can help people have those real conversations before it quite literally is too late. That's the goal.
That's very powerful, and it's a very courageous story to share, and the vulnerability and the humanity there is so palpable.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to acknowledge you for sharing that with us today. Um, and I think that's such a strong why, right? Like that desire to make sure that nobody else suffers through that episode in that way. It was your way, but everybody has their own journey, and the context might the content might be different, the situation might be different, but the context of not being able to communicate, or like you said, living in la la land, or not living in reality, right? That whole conversation is so prevalent, and like you said, everywhere we go, and the
Yeah,
impact is, and so often we're so numb to that impact until it's too late, or sometimes we never even notice.
yeah. I was just having a conversation with a client yesterday about this. Like all the problems that we were talking about, all the issues and where they were struggling as a team to just they couldn't communicate. Uh, we got to the end of the workshop and they were like, these were things that we all knew, right? But we weren't actually talking about. And so now we actually had the space to have the conversation, acknowledge, yeah, we're not behaving well to each other. We are not acting like a team. We are trying to carry this whole company on our backs by ourselves. But we have a whole team around us and we're all struggling with all the same things, but we're not acknowledging it. We're back to that fantasy world. We're living in that again. It's like, well, we all know this and we do this as human beings all the time. And the like we all know it's happening. This is the part that drives me crazy. Is like we all see this is happening, right? But we're not acknowledging it. And so if we don't acknowledge it, how do we actually work through it? We can't do anything about it until we've said this is a problem and we need to work through this. Or, let's not go negative either. This is an opportunity. And what can we do with this? But so often we're just like, I don't want to deal with that, or I don't want to dream about that, because dreaming about something big and next can also feel a little bit scary.
Yeah, I think, like you said, the going to the moon, but how do I get there? Right? It's kind of like what you said, the implementation part. So I wonder how many people actually see it and have given up, or don't have a path forward, and so don't do anything about it. Just assume that's how it's going to be, and accept it or just deal with it in their own way. Yeah. So maybe there's some nuggets you can share around some of the lessons learned from that share you had, and maybe from some of your clients, or, the personal side of that a little bit. Just some nuggets that we could maybe take with us to apply to our own life. Like you said, people go home and have conversations with their families that they didn't think were possible. So anything you could share in that area would be a great blessing to all of us, I think.
Yeah, I think what happens is fear as human beings. Fear is what gets in our way all the time. And I think that's why when I reflect back on my own story and then I think about the clients that I work with and the conversations that I have with people, it always comes back to fear. Well, I'm afraid if I say something, they'll think I'm crazy, or they won't like me anymore, or I won't be involved, or something like that. And so recognizing that, yes, the fear is there, but also for the most part, everybody knows it's already happening, right? If you and your, like, I was having a conversation, doing a presentation with groups of couples this week, and we were having a conversation about how each of them knows the problem going on in their household, and they both know it's an issue, but they haven't talked about it together. And so they get to pretend that it's not a problem, but they both knew about it. They're like, oh yeah, we know we got to figure out this issue with our son because he's not behaving in the way that we need to. Partner one knew it, partner two knew it, but they were both afraid that by acknowledging it, saying something to the other person, then it became reality. Well, it was already reality. It was already happening, right? And so just considering, I think a nugget for people would be like, considering where's your fear lying to you? Because if everybody in the household already knows about it, if everybody in the company already knows about it, then what's the real fear? Because it's not the fear bringing it up then, because everybody's already aware of it. They're just not talking about it. So what's behind that? And then realizing most times it's a pretty empty fear. It's pretty empty. And for you, every single time, this happens every single time when somebody is brave enough to say the thing or have the statement or ask the question, every single time the people around the table say, thank you for saying that, or I was just thinking that, or yes, that was the question that I had. Every single time. It's insane. Every single time. So I think
So
that.
so it comes down to fear or love, right?
Mm.
I mean, we hear that construction all the time, and this is just another cut at it, like looking at it from the honesty perspective and the openness perspective of another way that we get to choose between love and fear, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think, what is that? The number one fear is not death, but the fear of looking bad, right? Public speaking, looking bad, that whole thing, right? It's kind of like, how do I speak up, right? So
Yeah,
it
I
takes
think
that person to say something.
and it comes to like the very real need to belong, right? I think it's Brene Brown who talks about like fitting in versus belonging, right? What we're really all after is belonging, to be seen and known as we truly and freely are, which is our definition of honesty, is being truly and freely yourself, speaking into what you want and how you feel. That's belonging right there. That's what we're all after. But what we end up settling for is fitting in, where we have to be in this certain box that has been prescribed by somebody who doesn't even exist anymore, right? Or that box is never really real. And so we say, okay, I'll take fitting in. I'll take this. This is like 1/10 of what I really want, of the feeling of belonging. But I'm afraid to go after that belonging, even though it's there and it's possible. I'll just stay with my 10% because that's all I deserve, or that's all I think I can get. Well, there's a very real possibility for 100%. You just got to make that leap. And that comes back to the love or fear, right? We stay in this fear, but think about all that love that could be there, to be fully known, to be loved in that way. So I love that you brought that up.
Yeah, I think her extension to that conversation, or the other dimension of that, was that we, as a human being, I try to fit in by being like everybody else in the group. Like you said, that 10%,
Yeah.
right? And the group is really starving for my uniqueness. If I'm like everybody else in the group, then I'm not really adding any value. So on one
Yes.
side, the group wants me to be there at 100%, like you said. And I think that by doing that, like you said, fear point that you pointed out too, right? I try to fit in the exact opposite way by just fitting in. It is such a conundrum. Right? I think the construction is so ridiculous, but we're all human beings and we all do it. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think we just uncovered another bigger game right there, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, share with us a little bit more about some of your work and some of the things you've come across on your journey. Some things that we could actually, I love the idea of, you know, sitting in fear and recognizing being the one to speak up and acknowledging the white elephant in the room and all of that. Is there anything else you want to add to that, or maybe another look from a different perspective that kind of speaks to your work a little bit and your experiences?
Yeah. I think we talked before we started recording about how my question is always, people give you a theory or a process or something. It's a great idea. They'll give you a great idea. And then my thought is always, okay, so what do I do with that? Right. And so I gave you before, listeners, I gave the definition of honesty. And, we were really seeing this lack of honesty going on in the workplace. And we wanted to step in and find a solution for that. And as we were doing research, what really happened in that whole process, which I think is just, this is the most fascinating thing. But the question became, okay, so we're clear that there's a lack of honesty, but it's something that we want. We all want to be honest. For the most part, we want people to be honest with us. We don't
Yeah.
want to live in this fantasy world. So the question becomes, well, why is that happening then? If we don't want it, but it's still happening, what's going on there? And so that's where the openness comes into the conversation, and where I think it really also plays back into what we're talking about with fear and where that comes up. So honesty is, as we define it, is being truly and freely yourself, speaking into what you want and how you feel. We all want that, right? We all want to be truly and freely ourselves, ideally. We all want to speak into what we want. We all want to say how we feel, right? That's what we want. But why? Why do we not? And that's where the openness comes on the other side. A lot of times people will come to me and they'll think, I mean, being an open book or being transparent, when I say openness, that's really that's still the honesty side of things. It's still wrapped up in me, myself, and I. Where we take it and we flip it and we think about openness differently. And what we found was really the huge lack that was driving the dishonesty was this lack of openness. And so openness we define as listening without reservation, putting your needs and wants on pause for someone else. I'm going to say that again for listeners because we're thinking about it differently. Openness is listening without reservation, putting your needs and wants on pause for someone else. And just consider, if you knew that that is the posture that somebody was taking on the other side of whatever it is that you had to say, we know that the likelihood that you will be 100% honest with that person goes up. It skyrockets up. And so that is like the big, to me, it's the biggest missing leadership gap out there right now, is this openness, this real skill, this ability to listen without reservation, to put your needs and wants on pause for somebody else. That is the biggest gap that I am seeing right now when it comes to communication, when it comes to leadership. All of that is we don't have that ability. I think I lost you. Now I'm just talking to myself. I love this.
Did I lose you too? You hear
You're
me?
back now.
Okay. You were talking about, boy, so this is real world stuff, right? Um, this is
I know. I was talking and then you
okay.
just disappeared. I was like, I don't know what to do now.
So openness, you're talking about the need for openness. Like one is to be able to speak our honest truth, right?
Yep.
And the other side was openness.
Yep.
And the need for openness of people to actually speak what they have to say. Could you start from there about openness and the importance in the workplace? I think you were commenting on that when we got disconnected. So you can start that whole thought from the beginning. That would be great.
Yeah. Where do I start from? Oh, so openness, where we're thinking
Openness. Yeah.
openness. We're thinking about it differently because a lot of people think about it as being an open book or being transparent. That's still wrapped up in the honesty side of things. It's still you sharing who you are, what you're thinking, what you're feeling, all those types of things. Still me, myself, and I. We're getting better at that. I would say there's a lot of focus on that out in the world and conversation around authenticity and your authentic self. Uh, and I think that's great. But what we're missing on the other side is openness. And where we flip openness and think about it differently is we define it as listening without reservation, putting your needs and wants on pause for someone else. I'm going to say that again. It is listening without reservation, putting your needs and wants on pause for someone else. And so, what we know is that if we know and understand and trust that the person on the other side of the table from us is open, is 100% open, or they're working on their skill, because these are skills, right? The likelihood that we are going to be honest with them, 100% honest, more honest with them, skyrockets because we have that trust going back and forth that this person is really going to listen to what I have to say. And that is the biggest leadership gap that I'm seeing right now is just this ability to be open. We are not great at it as leaders, as human beings. And so that's a lot of what I focus on when I'm working with clients is yes, we need to be able to speak into what we want, how we feel, where we're at, have that skill. But on the other side of that, if we really want our honesty to go anywhere, if we want it to matter at all, we got to have people on the other side who are open to it. And we got to develop that skill for ourselves and for our other people in our companies, in our lives around the world.
So it's like, we have two ears and one mouth for a reason, right?
Yeah.
We get to listen twice as much as we talk. Right? We hear that all the time in one way or another. And you've brought a whole new dimension to it here today with giving the time for people to actually, take in what people are saying, like making that an intention as part of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Conversation is not so much, thinking about myself and okay, what do I want to say and what is important to me in this. What do I want out of this meeting, right? It's the whole other side that you just brought up. I wonder what the other person's going to want out of this meeting and what's important
Mm-hmm.
to them, right?
Yeah,
I
and
think
it's the
that's
balance.
huge.
It's the half
It's a
and half, right?
dance, right?
You still
Yeah,
get to get what you want out of it or have that statement, but we've over-indexed on that, in my opinion.
yeah. We get too much of a priority of me sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And really, I wonder if we step into that me more, then maybe part of being me and my own integrity is being there for that person, actually listening to what they have to say as part of me, as part of who I am, right? Just a different
Yeah.
cut at this concept of being me. I think that's fantastic. And I think the other part of that is, when I say something, I'm responsible to make sure that, like in this case, Grace, right? Like you actually got what I said, right? And it's a mutually thing on the other side where you're listening and it's kind of your responsibility 100% to make sure you heard what I said. So we're both playing 100% instead of this conversation. What I'm
Yeah.
saying, I'm making sure you actually heard it 100%, right? And vice versa, you actually made sure you listened to it with openness 100%. So I think
Yeah.
that's a phenomenal thing you just brought up and kind of brought home for us.
Yeah, you're unlocking
And I
like a
wonder,
different
I wonder,
thought there. Yeah.
I wonder how many families gonna have some interesting conversations tonight, and hopefully after listening to this podcast.
Because that's when it
Thanks to you.
happens. We think about, like for me, when I'm talking to clients and they wonder why they have to have the same conversation with somebody 2, 3, 4, 7 times with them. Well, it's probably because they're not actually listening. And so they're not actually hearing what you have to say, quite literally. But then on the other side of it, do you even know what you're saying? Are you being clear with them, or is it confusing? And now not only is it confusing, but they're not actually hearing you. So then we got to have the conversation again. Like, that's what I'm thinking when you had that whole, like, yes, there's a whole next level to it.
Right. That's phenomenal. Do you want to bring us home with some final thoughts here? Is there more you want to talk about? Is it you take us home? Where do you want to go from here, Grace?
Yeah. So I think what I want to leave, man, we could go forever. I think we could. But what I want to leave people with is just considering communication is the foundation of how we connect with people, and we understand others and how they understand us. And we all think that we can communicate because we can talk, but that's not necessarily true. And so the question is, where are you at with these two skills? Really assessing how often are you really honest with the people in your lives? How often are you acknowledging, not living in that fantasy world? Because we get one shot, I believe, at this life. And so let's not live in a fantasy world. And on the other side of it, how often are you really hearing what the people in your lives have to say? How often are you really open to them and not trying to control or have them fit just into your narrative, your fantasy land, your version? Because I guarantee they're never going to perfectly fit, because they're their own unique human being. And so just considering that would be my big ask for people, because at No Honesty, we're on a mission to change how the world communicates, one conversation at a time. So I ask that you have your next conversation and just consider, how honest are you being? How open are you being?
Yeah, wow, that's just a simple bottom line thing. I can just write that on my forehead and look in the mirror and keep keep asking myself that question, and that sums up everything you said. So that's phenomenal. How can people reach you if they want to reach out to you, Grace?
Oh, that's a great question. I am on LinkedIn, so posting about this, having conversations around this all the time. So you can find me at Grace Gavin on LinkedIn. And if you want to go deeper on these two skills and the practices that really help you hone them and develop them, our book is called No Honesty. That's KNOW. You can find that anywhere books are sold. It's by myself and my co-founder Ken Bogard. We're co-authors on that book. So No Honesty by Ken Bogard and Grace Gavin. And you can go so much deeper, and then reach out to me and let's have a conversation about it.
That's so kind of you, Grace. Thanks for giving us some time today and sharing the great nuggets, sharing about your dad, and then bringing it all home for us in just a couple sentences. That was phenomenal. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.